Hi, let us move on into the next page, that is the page 8, is related to science and technology, GS paper 3. The writer of the column is urging the greater adoption of this type of nuclear reactor, the small nuclear modular reactor. The writer says that if yes, SMR reactors are widely used and installed around the world, it could help countries achieve the net zero emissions, which is a target that many countries are pursuing as a part of their climate action goals. Net zero means you are equating your carbon sequestration with that of carbon emission. That is the amount of carbon emissions a country is contributing. If it is equated with the carbon emissions being sequestered and saved, then a country achieves a state of net zero emissions. That is, in terms of the country would not be contributing to greenhouse gas emission, which contributes to global warming. Many developed countries have declared net zero emissions as a target by 2040 to 2045. Countries like US, even than European countries, they are all striving to achieve the net zero emission by 2045. By middle of the century, countries like China have announced a net zero target by 2060. India also settled a net zero target. So please identify what is the deadline index given for itself under Paris Agreement as a part of the voluntary contribution that the countries are making under Paris Agreement to tackle the climate change. India has announced a voluntary net zero target. So find out the year deadline that the Modi government has set, and to ensure that India becomes a net zero emission country. So please mention that in the comment section, and find out net zero emission target that India has set for itself, and do not comment in the comment section. Now India's path towards net zero emission is largely based on adoption of clean renewable energy, which is mainly dependent on solar and wind power. In fact, most countries around the world are depending on solar and wind power and electric vehicles and battery storage to reduce the dependency on fossil fuels like coal, crude oil, natural gas, etc. It's fossil fuel that is essentially emit the greenhouse gas emissions, right? So coal is widely used in thermal power industry to produce the electricity. Crude oil, lateral gas, is also used for transportation and for various other industrial applications. So the goal of the most of the countries is to transition towards a clean economy, to decarbonize their economy, and to decarbonize their economy by switching to renewable sources of energy such as solar power and wind power. So especially when it comes to electricity generation, the focus of the world is to shift from thermal power, that is coal based fossil fuel based power, to solar and wind power. And to widely adopt and deploy a solar and wind power, you need batteries that can store this energy and transmit this through the grid. That is what will help in increasing the adoption of these renewable forms of energy. In terms of transportation, the push is for electric vehicles, and again you need efficient batteries that can store the energy and drive the vehicles. So this is the path that the world is following towards the clean and renewable energy. And apart from these investments in solar and wind power electric vehicles, countries are also investing in nuclear power plants. Because nuclear power or nuclear energy through which the electricity can be produced very efficiently, this is also a type of clean energy. Nuclear power is a clean by splitting atom, right? The electricity that is generated, it's free from emission, and even its stress on the environment is very limited compared to other large projects like hydropower projects, thermal power plants, and the carbon footprint of a nuclear power plant is very less. So around the world there is a push towards nuclear energy as well, as the countries are mainly investing in large nuclear power plants. The problem with the large nuclear power plants is that they are facing a lot of challenges. The problem with the large nuclear power plants are plenty of challenges. That is, associated with them. There is a high risk of nuclear accidents. There is a concerns about how the nuclear accident and the spent fuel will be handled, because that's why the environment there is also concern about rising cost and delays in setting up of large nuclear facilities. So this is where the writer is suggesting that the world should adopt the small nuclear modular reactors as an alternative to complement the large nuclear power plants. He is not saying we should replace, but large power plants with the small reactors. He is saying that along with pursuing the large nuclear power plants, we should also complement that by setting up of hundreds and hundreds of small nuclear modular reactors to achieve the net zero emission target. The writer says that this will help the world to achieve and sustainable development goals number 7, which is to ensure access to affordable, reliable, sustainable, modern energy for all. So let us understand a little more about the writer's argument. Let us see why the writer does not believe that solar and wind power alone is not a solution to achieve the net zero emission. Let's talk about the limitations with the large nuclear power plants and how the small modular reactors can be good alternative. The problem with just relying on solar and wind power is that end up heavily in depending upon batteries. You need extremely efficient lithium-ion batteries to store the energy being produced through the solar power projects and wind projects in order to sustain the power grids. The same is the case for electric vehicles. To ensure that transportation is efficient, which is based on electric vehicles, you need efficient batteries to store the energy. Currently, the solution is lithium-ion batteries, but the problem with the lithium-ion batteries is that need to heavy dependency on critical minerals. Even rare earth elements, we have to depend extremely on a few critical resources like rarely available resources like lithium, nickel, cobalt and rare earth elements. So it is essentially means that around the world mining projects are going to increase because of our dependency on lithium, nickel, cobalt and because of the critical need for rare earth elements. To produce the batteries that are needed to store the energy from the solar power and wind power, right? And to adapt the electric vehicle as well, we have to rely heavily on these metals, and it means that mining will increase and thus emissions will increase. So electric vehicles are not as clean as you think. Is that clear? Solar power also is not as clean as you think. There may be direct emissions through the production of energy in the electric vehicles and solar and wind power, but if you take the entire process into equation, then you will notice that the dependency on these critical minerals will increase mining exponentially. Countries are already rushing to secure their mining resources around the world, and the major producers are already ramping up mining activities from China to Australia to Democratic Republic of Congo to Indonesia to Bolivia, Chile, right? All around the world, wherever these resources are present, large scale mining is already taking place, and this will only increase the further mining and is not just a major environmental threat, but it will directly contribute to more emission and it will increase our dependency on fossil fuels again, because the machinery, the vehicles needed, they will depend on crude oil, lateral gas and coal, and it will drive up our fossil fuel dependency. Is that clear? In fact, we are already noticing this trend in many countries. In Europe, for example, even though European countries are switching to coke, cleaner energy based on solar and wind power, you witnessed a parallel dependency on fossil fuels as well. In fact, developed countries, coal consumption and even natural gas consumption has increased. despite the increased adoption of solar power and wind power. So that this is why the writer is clearly pointing out that relying on solar and wind power is not a solution. Yes, this is the part of the solution, but not the only solution, because excessive dependency on critical minerals will lead to more pollution, and it will lead to more emission, and it will further increase our fossil fuel dependency. Even though we are adapting clean and renewable energy, so that it is not a path, it's not a solution to achieve the net zero emissions. So that is why the writer is highlighting the importance of nuclear power. We have to pay more attention to nuclear power and assign a higher allocation to nuclear energy in our energy basket. Every country has a certain allocation for different sources of energy. In India, for example, almost 58% of our electricity is coming through the thermal power plants, which are fired by coal, right? We have scaled up our solar wind investment. We are stepping up our nuclear investment as well, but they are still a small percentage of total energy basket. Now the writer says that today around 10% of the electricity is already coming from large nuclear power plants, and the benefits are there to see around 10% of the global electricity is coming through nuclear power plant. That it is helping us avoid 180 million cubic meter of natural gas and bring down the CO2 emission by 1.5 million tonnes a year. That is estimate by providing based on the nuclear power plants that are operating in the world. Nuclear energy, as I told you, is a clean form of energy. But however, there are risks and challenges associated with them, with these large nuclear power plants. The biggest risk is of nuclear accidents. What if there is a large nuclear power accidents like Fukushima disaster or Chernobyl disaster, right? That could wipe out the entire cities, kill thousands of people, cause radiation leakage that could harm the environment as well. So a nuclear disaster is always a massive risk in the case of large nuclear power plants. Along with that, it's difficult to source highly enriched uranium, which is needed for electricity generation. There are a lot international safeguard implemented through International Atomic Energy Agency that has to be followed when you are setting up large nuclear power plant, because to prevent the nuclear proliferation and to prevent any nuclear accident from occurring, these international safeguards have to be strictly implemented. So this increases the challenges associated with the nuclear projects. So also the cost associated with the frequent delays has also become a challenge in completing large nuclear power plants. This is a challenge most countries are facing, be it India, be it a European country, even US, even Japan, right? They all face these challenges when setting up large nuclear power plants, because large nuclear power plants comes with their own set of risks and challenges. But the advantage of nuclear power is that all weather power, unlike solar and wind energy. Now please remember, solar and wind energy have a big limitations. They are dependent on few factors. You generate solar energy only during the daytime. There is only a good amount of sunshine, right? But during night you can't generate solar power, right? Same with the wind energy also. It's dependent on weather pattern. So you can't guarantee consistent grid supply. If you depend heavily on solar and wind power, you can't meet the electricity demand consistently through the solar and wind energy. That is one more reason why the solar and wind energy are not very efficient. Even though it is a part of the solution, it can't be the only solution. Whereas nuclear energy can be produced 24/7 through the day, throughout the year without any stop. So that way it is more grid efficient, and it will help you meet the sustainable demand, and it will also create a number of high skilled jobs in the technology, in manufacturing and operations. And because nuclear technology is more sophisticated compared to the solar power, and it has a greater potential and boost the research and development and manufacturing and create thousands of jobs in the country. So the writer says nuclear energy does have a lot of advantage, but it comes to setting up large nuclear power plants. There are a number of risks and challenges involved. One of the biggest concern is the frequent delays in the project, that is increase in the cost, frequent increase in the cost because of the scale of large nuclear power plants, because of the challenges in procuring uranium on large scale, and the challenges in delaying the safety measures, right? And some international obligations, they are all create challenges for your conventional large nuclear power plants. Is that clear? So this is where the writer points out that small modular reactors hold the tremendous potential. We have three types of nuclear reactors. First one is large conventional reactors. It's about, it can produce electricity up to 700 megawatt and above, right? That is a starting threshold for conventional large nuclear power plants. Such as these, where a small modular reactors, right, it requires very small land area to be installed. It can generate up to 300 megawatt of energy, so that it is classified as small modular reactors. And any small nuclear plant is designed to generate energy or electricity to a maximum of 300 megawatt is a small modular reactor. We also have micro reactors that produce up to 10 megawatt of energy, which is often used in spacecrafts, nuclear powered submarines, etc. So, all right. So these are the three types of nuclear reactors currently for generating electricity on a large scale. Countries dependent on small modular nuclear reactors, depend on large nuclear power plants. In India, for example, we have the Kudangulam nuclear power plant being built by Russia. We have nuclear power plant in Rajasthan, Uttar Pradesh, Karnataka, and in few other part of the country. All these are large nuclear power plants which involves a very large nuclear reactors. They require a lot of energy, nuclear fuel, that is uranium, and it requires a lot of safety measures to be put in place to prevent any accident or nuclear proliferation. And the countries use micro reactors as well, primarily to power the submarines and to safeguard submarines and spacecrafts. But so, however, there are very little focus on small modular reactors. But the writer says that the small modular reactors, they present a number of advantages, and the advantage is that it is the maximum of 300 advantage is that these reactors can be very easily set up in decommissioned thermal power plant sites itself. It will not consume more land. You don't have to scout for fresh land, clear forest, and to set up these small nuclear reactor facilities. Whereas setting up a large nuclear power plant will require a lot of land area. You have to follow the zoning standards and create a safe buffer zones and ensure there are no civilian habitation present around a large nuclear power plant because of the risks of accidents. And in case of small nuclear reactor, the risks of accident is very low and it does not require a large amount of the land. You can use existing thermal power plants and decommission them, replace them with small nuclear reactors. The best part is that their accident risk is extremely low. They use a very small nuclear core. The nuclear fuel which is used at the core of the reactor, right, it's a very small core that it reduces the likelihood of an accident, and the source term, which is a measure of radioactive contamination, is also many times lesser than your conventional large nuclear power plants. And also in small nuclear modular reactors, there are multiple fail-safe designs. It has adequate seismic protection and to protect these from earthquake. These plants from earthquake, and earthquakes are a major risk for large nuclear power plants. For example, Fukushima nuclear accident, which happened in 2011 as a result of the earthquake and tsunamis that hit Japan in 2011. So the small modular reactors are both safe against earthquake and they have enough seismic protection, and the design is much simpler, and they have a number of passive failed safety features that reduce the chances of nuclear accidents. So small nuclear reactors are many times safer than large conventional nuclear reactors. So as a result, the land required is less and the safety measures that you should follow is less, so you can quickly execute the project with the maximum safety levels and produce enough electricity as well. So around the country, if you set up enough small modular reactors, you supply the grid with reliable, sustainable, clean energy that reduces our dependency on fossil fuels while pushing our journey towards a net zero emissions. This is the critical importance of the small modular reactors. Even the requirement of low enriched uranium is less compared to the conventional large nuclear plants, and the countries can easily start supplying the low enriched uranium while matching the international safety standards laid down by International Atomic Energy Agency. So because of the reduced international obligations, easier access to nuclear fuel, and it will be cheaper to set up the plants, and the cost involved and the time involved will be significantly brought down. If the small modular reactors are set up to complement the large nuclear plants, the writer says India in particular has a great opportunity because India has the technology, India has the resource needed, and also all we have to do is we have to amend the Atomic Energy Act and enable the Department of Atomic Energy and other stakeholders to focus more on the small modular reactors. Right now, NPCL, the Nuclear Power Corporation of India Limited, along with the Department of Atomic Energy, they are just focused on large conventional nuclear plants. But if the right if changes are made, if the right policy, legal, regulatory changes are made, and if the institutions are given the right support and the resources, we can easily scale up the installation of the small modular reactors across the country, and we can produce a sufficient clean energy that will help us achieve the net zero emission by the defined target. Is that clear? Along with our investment in solar and wind power and in atomic vehicle, our investment in small modular nuclear reactors can definitely help India achieve the net zero emission according to, right?